Let's talk about the recruiting visits. Justin, take it away. This is kind of your specialty, and I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, so I mean the two biggest ones, of course, because Michael Terry will be visiting Monday, Tuesday. So the two biggest, most important ones were Isaiah Mozee and David Sanders Jr.
Hmm.
See David Sanders Jr. Of course, they're getting off the bus. A pretty big turnout for a Friday night at 5:30. People
Yeah,
getting off work and stuff like that. Tennessee tried to outdo it the next day and had about a
12.
small classroom of people show up. So they didn't really, it wasn't the same pizzazz and flair. And part of what David Sanders has talked about in liking about Nebraska is just how quickly Nebraska has come on in his recruiting process and been able to, make a mark on him and establish themselves as a key player in this and build that family relationship that he talks about. NIL isn't the first thing that he looks for with guys like a David Sanders and Michael Terry. Some of these guys that are of these top talents, NIL matters, but at the end of the day, these guys have a long career ahead of them of money, and so they're also trying to find the best fit for them. David Sanders, Tennessee was coming into this. Ohio State was kind of a probably, I would say, the favorite. Tennessee being second, Nebraska being third. Nebraska was able to make up some ground. Just from what I'm hearing, Nebraska did make up some ground. But the hardest part about determining this was Nebraska was in a very good spot. I'm just going to say that when he came out to campus and by the time he left, that Nebraska was in a really, really good spot with him. However, Tennessee getting the second visit, you never know what's going to happen off of that. So
Right.
if you asked me on Friday, I would have said Nebraska's in a really good spot. But again, we don't know the results or what was talked about behind closed doors with Tennessee. There's a lot of things indicating that, I know a lot of people have almost taken Ohio State out of the equation altogether. Ohio State is still in daily contact with him and very, very much a player in this. So do not be surprised if Ohio State, gets the nod there. But I'm feeling overall pretty good about it. I would say I'm leaning in like the 35-40% range that we could land them. Coming into the weekend, I would have said that's probably about 15-20.
Mm.
So we've made a lot of ground. And again, a lot of the stuff I'm hearing, I don't want to disclose it, but very, very good indications. And Isaiah Mozee. So Isaiah Mozee is a guy that I talked to Oregon fans about before, when Jamar Mosey initially came over. And again, they were very lukewarm about his commitment as it was. And so I could have, Isaiah Mozee is, I'm not going to say it's a done deal. I'm going to but Isaiah Mozee is about as in as you can get.
Mhm.
Essentially what this visit was. Now, the way this works is we came out of a quiet period. We're going into another one. So they had a little bit of a window here to get some of these guys in and discuss some of these, final details, like Michael Terry. Michael Terry isn't necessarily looking to do too much. Michael Terry wants to finalize details and see where he's at with these schools, Texas, Nebraska, and Oregon. So that's what a lot of these visits were. So Isaiah Mozee coming out, of course, Jamar is now going to be able to coach the players and he's going to be working with the offensive specialist. So he's going to be working hands-on with Isaiah. Unless something big changes, Isaiah Mozee is pretty much in. And we feel pretty good about that. But Isaiah Mozee was one of those guys that even before his visit, I felt like we were in a great spot to land him just because of his commitment level with Oregon. But yeah, just an absolute stud. And I tell people that if we come out of the weekend with Isaiah Mozee, it's still a win, right? I would still order it. Isaiah Mozee, David Sanders, Michael Terry, in terms of the order of what I think how likely we are to land them. But the one that I can almost say for certain is Isaiah Mozee. So a lot of good stuff coming out of it. The biggest thing though is that you saw the impact that this had on Sanders and what Sanders, Nebraska got in the recruiting process late on him. He's been to some of these schools, 3-4 times, and he was at Nebraska once in May. Nebraska didn't offer him until Dylan Raiola came over. They were recruited together at Georgia. They were friends from that. As soon as Raiola came over to Nebraska, that's when Nebraska offered him. So these schools have been on him for 2, 3, 4 years. Nebraska got in at the buzzer, and they are here essentially in the final 3 competing for him. So we have a lot to be optimistic about no matter what, but we should get more intel out of the Tennessee visit here pretty soon, and I'll keep everybody up to date on the latest there. So that's the big storylines out of the weekend, though.
Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate the rundown on that. You said also that Phil Steele was on with Mark, right, from the Voice of College Football, and he had some interesting stuff to say about what he thinks for Nebraska and the prospects for them. Was he talking a little bit of recruiting as well, or was it just kind of what he sees this team shaping up to be?
So yeah, Mark was able to cover down for the interview with Phil Steele, and he feels good about where Nebraska's at. Just talking about going into next season in terms of he trusts Dylan Raiola. He thinks Dylan Raiola can make the necessary throws he needs to be successful at the next level. But also he dumped a stat where 75% of teams with double-digit turnovers improve drastically year over year. So Nebraska not only had double-digit turnovers, they had 30 some odd turnovers from just the QB room alone. So we're not talking just if we're talking a baseline where teams with double-digit turnovers 75% of the time improve significantly, then a team with 3 times the amount of double-digit turnovers from just one, room. Think about the level, because the way it works in these things is you see that statistic, but think about just how far past just double digits Nebraska was, and you also factor that in, because that's something I don't think people pay attention to is, there's a difference between 10 and 35. And so even more of a percentage, in my opinion, that gives Nebraska above the odds of the 75% to make a year-over-year jump, on top of many other things that I've talked about. But he kind of echoed the sentiment, a lot of that. But it's over on the channel if y'all want to go check that out. But that was very interesting, that number that he brought up there. And again, he had Nebraska's defensive line in his top. They were the second in his magazine on teams he expects to improve the most this season. So he's very, very bullish on Nebraska, and he gives a lot of insight as to why that's the case. So
didn't Phil Steele, did he mention by chance, because I want to say it was post 2021 or maybe it was post 2020, because he gave kind of the same prediction when we were really, really bad in the turnover margin.
22, I know he had us in the top somewhat of most improved teams, but yeah, so go on.
Yeah. Sorry. So did he mention like, hey, I know I've made this prediction in the past that Nebraska was going to have a flip. Like, it's statistically, it's inevitable. Like, Nebraska should flip in a better direction.
Yeah.
It's such an anomaly that we've had such a long stretch of turnover margin errors. Did he mention anything about that? Like, okay, like, for real, guys, like, this is absurdly improbable that Nebraska has another year of turnover blunders.
Yeah. So one of the big things that he does over time is he's always constantly, because I get his magazine every year, he's constantly redoing these formulas and trying to find ways to make it more statistically accurate. He crunches the numbers after the year and sees, just based on, because he has about 9 different rankings that he puts cumulatively together to kind of get to his overall rankings. And so he finds the best way to weight those to kind of, give him the best statistics in terms of his predictions goes. So it's constantly evolving. So he goes a little bit into his process and why he believes it. But yes, he's much more bullish on Nebraska this year than most. And he does dive into a little bit of Whiteside's case basically, but he's talking about kind of the way he judges these teams going into the season and the reasons why he's like cautioning people, like, I'm not just saying this isn't just another year of the same old same. I have a legitimate reason why this is the case. And that's why we wanted to get him on. We wanted to see, like, okay, but people talk about, Nebraska's been at the top of your magazine before and expected most improved teams, and it hasn't. So why is this team different? And so
I'd love to pick his brain apart, because he's insanely accurate when it comes to his his statistical analysis, and then just it's not even the statistics. He has an understanding of culture, and he has an understanding of what's that third aspect? You got statistics, you've got culture, and then you've got faculty. Faculty, understanding the complexities of a cohesive faculty. Like, he just has, like, almost like a godlike power. It's
Yeah.
it's weird to say it like that, but
But-
so that's really good. That's really good that he is making sure to really put a lot of money on Nebraska.
Yeah. And it
Making
you know, you would think he studies every single team each year in and year out. He follows, because he's constantly updating his website based on how teams are doing and stuff like that. So he has stuff updating on his website and stuff like that. So he studies this stuff so closely, and he follows so many different teams and does his research and analytics on so many different teams. That's why he's so good at what he does and so smart, because that's his life's work. Is like, he doesn't focus on one specific team. He really puts the effort into every single team, and it shines through in his work, and his accuracy. So comes a lot of hard work from him. That's why I love his magazine. And it just gave some great insights on that. So if y'all want to go check that out, it's a good listen. It's only about 5-6 minutes. So
Okay. Right there on the Voice of College Football, the main channel, right?
yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. Cool.